Thank you for joining me for episode 18 of My Doll's House Diary and the first episode of 2020. Now, I mentioned in the last episode that I was hoping to spend a couple of days working on the doll's house over the Christmas holidays. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but I did manage to spend a few hours on it yesterday afternoon, and I carried on with lining the walls. So I'll show you what I managed to get done, and then we'll crack on. So I've just finished papering the right-hand bedroom. And that all went on nicely and dried back nice and flat. A little bit of an overhang around the door opening there, which I'll trim off when I trim the rest of the sort of overhanging pieces in the other rooms. And then I moved down to the dining room, and I hadn't actually made templates for this room. So I just used the side wall templates and the back wall template. Obviously they're the same size. And I can then cut out the doors once the glue has completely dried. And I've got this really handy little cutting mat, which I got free with a magazine 9 years ago. And what I can do is just slot that inside like that, and then cut using my craft knife from the other side there, and I can do the same for that external door, which you can see round there. But what I actually did, I glued the paper, so I started over there on the right hand wall, and I went round and everything was going okay until I got here to this corner, and I was about an inch short. So I pulled back the paper really quickly and reapplied, obviously just moving it over a little bit on that right hand side there. In fact, I moved it far too much because I've got a big overhang here. That's okay because I can trim that off. But what happened when I pulled it off is that the paper stretched. So when I've then stuck it back down, there are quite a few wrinkles. So I'm not overly happy with that, and I have used the hairdryer on it. I'm not even sure if you can see it. Can you see on camera there in the middle at the top? There's that sort of crease along there. But I am going to be repapering some of the walls because I want to do some feature walls, as we've spoken about before. And some of the walls will be painted, so although I sort of hadn't planned it, I will now be having that back wall as a feature wall so that I can just paper over it and hopefully cover up that crease. But also chances are, I mean, this is going to be the dining room or breakfast room, so I'll be having a nice big cabinet at the back there, I would imagine, or a dresser. I really haven't thought about it, but I do like making the larger dressers and cabinets, so I'll probably include something like that and cover that up. And the sort of baggy bit that you can see there is obviously the opening, so that's okay because that will all be trimmed away. And I'm going to do that next. So I'll fit the camera onto the tripod and get that done. So once that's done, I've then just got the central hall area to do and the bottom hall area. Now this one, I've got templates for the side walls but not the back, so I'll do the same thing again there. I'll need to pull the cabinet out to get behind there. And I can do the same thing again down there. So I've got a template for this left hand side and the back. And then I'll do the same thing again, just a plain piece of paper across there. And then we can cut out from the other side. Okay, so I've got you propped there at the back of the entrance hall. I couldn't do it with the camera behind me because my head was in the way as usual. So there, press the board against the wall in that room. I'm just wondering how to do it actually. Okay. Let's see actually if I can hold it with my right hand and cut left-handed. So make sure you've got the cutting board pushed firmly up against the door, and I can always trim off any bits that aren't completely straight. And I'm only able to do this with my left hand because I'm following that outline of the door. Just very carefully push that through. Felt good doing that actually. It's caught down there, but I can't see from here, so I'll just pull that up. Okay, so let's have a look at that from the other side. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. These sort of bits around the door will be covered anyway with the door surround, so they won't be seen. Just need perhaps to just tuck a little bit more glue behind there. Yep, so that worked. So I'll now do the outer door. See the damage on the inside. I'm not happy with that paper above the door there. I was going to try and peel it back, but it will just tear. I think what I could do, if I'm going to be applying a pattern paper to here, is just cut it off down that corner and strip this bit off and redo it. I'm just not happy with that bubbling at the top. So it seems like there's hardly any glue under there as well. That's obviously because where I pulled it off, the glue wasn't as strong when I stuck it back on. And I would have just pulled it all off and screwed it up and started again, but I'm just aware that I'm running out of lining paper, and I wanted to get the internal rooms done today, if not the doors. I think the doors are over here. We'll have to wait until I've been back to the DIY store and got some more paper, but that's okay because while they're just sort of sitting about anyway, they're probably just going to get scuffed and ruined, so it probably makes sense to leave those until I'm almost ready to put them back on. Okay, well I'll leave that for now anyway, and I'll carry on now with the remaining two entrance halls. So it turned out I didn't have as much paper left as I thought, and I was unable to do even one of the entrance halls. Because I'm obviously doing it all in one piece, that's quite a long piece that's needed, and I just didn't have enough, so I am going to have to pop out to B&Q. But I did have enough to do the ceilings for each room, so I've done those. And I think when I was talking about doing the papering, I said about cutting around the door magnet, which was here. Let me just show you that, which sat up there. But obviously it made more sense just to remove the magnet altogether, and then I can fix that back up when I come to fit the doors again. But I did just pop the screws back in the holes there so I don't forget where it went. So I know where to put that, and I've just put that back in the little pot with all the other screws and hinges and things, and I'll leave that in the attic until we need it. But a little bit annoyed because I really had my sort of papering head on today, and I really would have liked to have got the whole thing finished, but at least I got a couple of rooms done. It just feels like this stage has been going on for quite a while now, probably because I started it before Christmas. It just feels like it's been taking a long time, but it's not the most exciting job either. I think all these sort of preparation jobs are a little bit boring, but they do need to be done, and I'm really pleased with how it all looks now. We've got a lovely base now to start redecorating from. So I've sort of tidied up for today. It's actually only 3 o'clock, so I've got time to go and get back on with another project I'm working on at the moment. So I'll do that, and then tomorrow I want to make a plan for the study. So I want to make a shopping list. I want to get some sample pots from B&Q. First of all, I need to do a little bit of research online and find a nice wallpaper. I'm not even sure what sort of wallpaper I want yet. Probably something stripy to go along with that sort of blue beach themed look I want in there. But I've got a few places I can have a look, and I've got a trade account obviously with Streets Ahead, so I'll have a look through their catalogue as well. And then I thought it might be nice if we go through my fabric box and see if I've got anything in there that we can use. So we'll do that tomorrow as well. And I also want to look at building the chimney breast to go in the study, actually get that built. So we've got some more exciting jobs ahead of us. I hope you're not finding these episodes a little bit tedious, but this, like I say, these preparation stages need doing, although they're not the most exciting parts of the job. Okay, so I'll leave you there for today, and we'll continue with the study preparation tomorrow. Okay, so I want to make a start by measuring up for the chimney breast in here. So this is the one that was in there before, and I like the width of that, but I need it to be deeper, because if you remember, I want to put that little built-in bench underneath the window there, and that will look silly if it's sticking out further than the chimney breast. So I want the chimney breast to be as wide as that little seat, so that it sort of runs on from it. Now, the chimney breast in the kitchen below is 31mm deep. Now, I had wanted to do it 38mm deep, or slightly deeper, as the standard size for a seat, the part that you actually sort of sit back onto, is 38mm, which is 1.5 inches, so in real life 1.5 feet. But I think I'm going to have to take a bit of artistic license and just do the seat 30mm deep, which would still be over 1 foot deep. So it's not going to look too sort of out of scale. But the reason is, when you're sort of looking at the house from the front, I don't want the chimney breast in here to look deeper than the one directly below it. I don't think that will look very nice. So I'll do it 30mm deep. Now, when I was putting the house together, I don't know if you can see right at the top, or yes you can, there's a little bit of a gap, and that's fine because I'm going to have coving around the top. But when I was putting the house together, I wasn't consistent with how I did each room. So in some of them I put the flooring down and then made the chimney breast to go on top of it. And in others I had it like this, so the chimney breast fitted in first and then I cut the flooring around it. Well, that's obviously more difficult to do. So this time I shall do the flooring, and then I want the hearth to tuck underneath the chimney breast, and then the chimney breast, and then we'll leave a little bit again at the top, which just makes it easier to get in and out. Otherwise you have to angle it and then scrape it all along the ceiling and everything, so just bear that in mind when you're measuring up for something like this. Right, what I've got here is a piece of wooden strip flooring, and you buy this, and I'm going to be using this for each room. Now this is, as you can see, the dark wood, but they also do a untreated wood, so a natural wood strip that you can then paint or varnish yourself, and they do a pine one, so it's treated pine and it's got a lovely sheen to it. But I'll be using the natural wood because I want to have a different flooring effect in each room, and it's self-adhesive. And we will get around to this once we do the flooring, but what I do is I strip apart all of these strips, and then I lay them onto my template to make it more of a random strip floor. And like I say, we will get on to that, but then you've got more joins and you can do your little nail holes and really add some nice detail to it. But I'm just using this for now for the thickness. So I'll lay that along there. And then I've left it in the other room, but I've also cut a hearth just from some wood. Let me just go and grab that. So I've just cut 2 pieces of 3mm sheet wood, that's 1/8 of an inch, to measure 154mm, which is the same width as that chimney breast around. And I've done it 54mm or 2 1/8 of an inch deep. Now I think that might be a little bit too deep. The chimney breast will be 30mm, so we may have a little bit too much overhanging at the front, but if that's the case I can just trim that off. Then what I plan to do is to make the bottom sheet a little bit narrower all the way around, and then have the top sort of like a lip, so it'll look like that all the way around, and will be a little bit neater than that as well. But again, we'll be getting to that as we go along. So I'll put that there, that's where it will sit, and then I need to use my tape measure in here rather than the rule because it doesn't fit, and the 6-inch one is too short, so these are really handy to have. I'm just making sure I'm pressing that right up to the top there. Let's see. Again, sorry if I'm in your way. That's 219mm. And then I want to take, let's say, 3mm from that measurement to allow for the chimney breast to go in and out smoothly. So I'll say 216mm high. Let me just jot that down. And then the other sort of measurement I want will be the opening. And again, I quite like the size of this one, so I'm going to stick with these measurements. Let me measure that as well. So that is 93mm high, which is about 3 5/8 of an inch. So 93 high, and then the width of the opening is 100mm, so 4 inches. So I'll stick with that for that opening. And then if you remember, I'm going to be having, I'm not going to have a fire in there, a sort of electric fire, but remember I showed you that picture of that lovely fireplace with the lanterns in it and the baskets? So that's what I want to sort of replicate in there. And I think that'll look really nice. And that's another thing. I'll probably have a nice burning log burner in the living room, which, if you remember, I want to make into a sort of log cabin type room. But in here it will be sort of set for summer, and that's okay. If you want to have different seasons in different rooms of your house, then you can do that. And I think we spoke about that in another episode about how you know, there are no rules when it comes to your miniature world. You can do exactly as you please. So that's what I'll be doing. This one will be a nice, light, airy, cool, summery room. And obviously the log cabin room will be set for winter with a log burner and logs and lots of blankets and throws strewn about. Okay, so let's get back into the craft room. To construct the chimney breast, I'm using 2.5mm thick sheet wood. That's 3 32 of an inch. And I've cut pieces here for the front. And the only reason I've done it in 2 pieces is because my sheet wood is 100mm wide, 4 inches wide, and I need the chimney breast to be 154. So I've cut pieces in 2 equal parts there. So you want to do them to the height that you want, and then if you've got a piece of sheet wood wide enough, just cut it in 1 piece. If not, do it as I've done in 2 equal parts, rather than having like a thicker bit and then a thinner bit. And then I've cut pieces here for the side, and when you do that, you want to, my side pieces are going to sit behind the front sheet. So when you're doing that, you want to deduct the thickness of your front sheet from the depth of the side piece. So 28.5mm here plus the 2.5 makes up my 31mm deep, which is the depth I want the chimney breast to be. I then cut some pieces here. One of these will make up sort of like the top part if we imagine we're building like a set of shelves. And again, because I want my side pieces here sitting on the inside of the front or behind the front piece, these need to be shorter by double the width of your wood. I'm trying to get that to stand up, it's not going to. Let's put it that way. So that will fit in between there, and I think I'm going to need to do a bit of sanding because that already feels a little bit too wide. But you get the idea, you need to deduct 2 times the thickness of your wood from the width, overall width, and that will be your inner pieces. And then I've cut some more of those which I'll use down there like shelves, but really to use as support. When you're making a large structure like this, it's best to support it as well as you can, otherwise you might find it tends to sort of cave in a little bit. And as well, because I'm joining these 2 front pieces, that makes them less sturdy than one whole piece of wood would be. So that's for that. I've then cut pieces which will sit on the inside of the opening, and we'll cut the opening in a moment. So they'll go like that to make up those sides, and then I've cut a piece to go along the top there, which won't be seen. I'll paint it black anyway, but when I do my actual fire surround, the opening of that will actually be shorter, so it'll probably be about down here, and you won't be able to sort of see up and see that there's a shelf there. And then I've cut just a spare piece here of 28.5mm wide strip again, and then once we've constructed these sections down here, I'll also support with a few bits of shelving. Now, I just feel like I've just shouted a lot of measurements at you there, but I've just said that because as we go through and you see how it's constructed, you'll have more of an idea of how to measure out your own piece. So though I've given you the measurements, obviously they're not measurements for you to use, it's just to give you an idea. So the first thing I want to do, I'll pull these pieces to one side, is to cut out the opening. So if you remember, I wrote down that I want it to be 100mm across and 93mm high. So the across measurement you want to divide by 2, so that's nice and easy, 50mm. Make a pencil mark across there, like that. And I'll do it up there as well. Just checking if I'm in camera. I'll make the measurement on this one as well. 50mm. And then turn it that way and do your height measurement. I wanted mine to be 93mm. I'm actually going to go up a little bit, draw a line down there, and then I'll do 93 along there as well, and then join that up. I'm going to be cutting this section out, but if you did want to do yours so that you've got a piece going across there, and this is one piece, and then you wanted to make that as another piece, you can do that if you find that easier than cutting sections out. But again, the more pieces you use, the less sturdy it's going to be. So that's why I'm doing it this way. But that's just another option if you don't like sort of cutting sections. And it can be quite difficult, especially from a sort of thicker wood like this. But we'll see how we get on. So 93, another one there. And then join those up. So I just put a new blade in before I started cutting this wood, so that will be sharp enough. But when you're cutting pieces out, it's best to have a new blade in there. And you always want to start by cutting against the direction of the grain, and that way the section that runs down there is less likely to split. But what I want to do first is just make a little nick in the corner there. And if you've followed one of my sink unit tutorials, you'll recognise this technique. And this is just to help keep the knife on track. You're less likely to sort of overrun if you've got a little nick in the wood. Again, when you're cutting freehand without your rule, always be aware of where your fingers are. You don't want sort of knife to spring out and go across like that. Even as I'd done that, it made me shudder because I've done something like that before. Like that. And then you can bring in your rule and cut in the normal way. And I just want to do a little nick at the end there. Let me just move up slightly. And then do your light cut. Once you've got those couple of cuts in there, you can move your rule if it makes it easier. But like I say, be careful of the old fingers. And it's such an awful feeling, isn't it, a craft knife cut? That sort of initial shock and then the pain. Like that, so that's now through. And now this piece will be easier to cut because we're running in the direction of the grain. I'm just going to do that little nick again there. I like to do that when I'm cutting out of thicker wood. Remove the rule. And there we go. So that's the first bit done. Save that. In fact, thinking about it, I could have cut the side pieces out of this section that I'm cutting out and saved myself some wood. So that's an idea as well. Cut your section out first and then use that for your side pieces. I'm just sort of looking again in those pictures I saved for inspiration for the study. I just feel so excited about getting on with it. It's just been such a long time since I've decorated a room and furnished it. And I'm just really excited to get started on it. It's like I was saying yesterday, the sort of lining paper bit isn't a very exciting job in anybody's book, but it does need doing. But it's one of those jobs where it's quite a bit of work involved, but you're not really seeing any progress. I think when you're decorating a room and you really see it coming together, it's one of the parts I really like. I went in too hard there on that first cut, so my knife came off track. So if you do that, just put your ruler back in the right place and start again. So it takes a little bit more effort cutting the thicker wood with this knife. I don't know if you saw my craft knife video. I'll perhaps link to that at the end. And there, through. But in it I talk about cutting the different thicknesses of wood. And this will actually cut up to a 3mm sheet. Anything thicker than that you'd need a power tool or a saw or something like that. And that's that bit. So they will go together like that, and there's our opening. So I'm going to glue those together now and then pop a bit of masking tape on. And that brings us right up to 1 o'clock. So whilst that's drying, I'll go and get a bit of lunch and then we'll finish constructing the piece. Just wipe that dust from the surface there. Put those together. Just actually going to use that strip to make sure that's flush along that top edge. that. Press them together, and then I'm going to put some masking tape across there and on the other side of the wood as well. And when you're joining two pieces like this, always go across. It's no point just putting a piece straight down like that, because then you're not pulling the two pieces together. So we'll pull it across nice and tightly like that. There as well, make sure they're staying flat against the work surface. That. And then you'll see that starts to try to sort of curl upwards like that. So I'm going to turn it over and put some on the other side as well. In fact, while that's like that, I'm just going to put a little bit more glue in there. Press those together again. Now it's trying to lift upwards. Stick that down like that. I'll put another piece across that middle. Pulled out far too much glue again. I'm just going to get rid of that excess. I want to turn that back over. And I want to weigh this down. I'm going to use a book, but so you don't get glue on your lovely books, just pop that on there like that. Let me find something nice and heavy. 3 nice heavy books there. I'll leave those on there whilst I have lunch, and then we'll carry on. This has been drying now for about 45 minutes, so this will be dry enough for me to continue working on. And I'm going to begin by attaching the side there, so on the inside of that sort of leg part, I suppose. Apply glue along there. Oops. A little bit of dust on there. Just use a spare piece there to make sure it's right at the top. When I insert that top part, that will sort of square the whole thing off. It's just like constructing sort of like a set of shelves or a tall bookcase. You sort of think of it like that. And then bring in this piece, and I did just sort of trim a tiny little bit off the end there. So I just wanted to make sure I've got 2.5mm there. Let me just grab a piece of sandpaper. I'm just going to take a little tiny bit more off, just because I don't want this second side to be hanging over. Do it like that, see if that's... yeah, that's about right now. Put the piece in as well. I was looking also at lunchtime through some photographs of my beach themed living room project, just to see if I could get a few more ideas, and I do want to recreate the flooring that I had in there. And I used those natural floorboards, fitted them all to my template, then painted them white, and before the paint was completely dry, just sanded it back to create that sort of weathered wood look. So I'm going to be doing that again. So when I make my shopping list in a moment, I'm going to need to include that white paint, because I don't think I'll have enough to do the whole floor. So I'm just making sure I've got a flush edge along the top there. Pressing it right into that corner. And that's now squaring that top section off. And then with these sort of central shelves, I haven't measured because I'm just going to put them in. Again, I'll need to trim a little bit more off these. I'll probably sort of do them like that, because then I'll have the top bit along there, and then we'll just put some little bits in at each side. So that will be enough to sort of strengthen it off. Let's just trim a little bit off there. And sometimes it can be, if you sort of look from the end of your piece of wood, if you've sort of cut and you've had the knife at a little bit of an angle, you'll find that it comes out, so you've got more along the top here than you have along the bottom, and obviously that will be your width, which will be too much. So sometimes it's just that you need to turn the piece over, go along again with your knife like I've just done there, and just shave a little bit off so that you've got a straight edge. So you can just pop it on your work surface and then just go along the edge of the wood with your blade and trim that off. So sometimes that's all you need to do. I think with this I just need to sand a little bit more off. When you're doing that, again, go in the one direction and keep the pieces upright as you can. Yep, that's better. So much better to check before you glue things into place. If you have glued it into place and then you find that it's a little bit too long and the glue has maybe dried too much that you can't just remove it, you can use your plane tool and just go along the edge and shave a little bit off that way while it's actually in place. So I'm just going to go about 30mm down with that one. And I'm not measuring, I'm just doing it by eye, but of course you can if you want to, if you'd rather do that. I'm quite good now at judging by eye, but because these are obviously at the back and are just for strengthening the piece, they're not going to be seen, so I'm not too worried if it's off angle a little bit. Like that. Where's the next one? So that piece will now go in there, and I just want to cut a few pieces to go down that leg, so I'll make like a little, move that up a bit, I'll make like a little bottom piece to go there at each side, and then maybe just do a couple of strengthening pieces, and that bit will sit across there. So once we've attached all of those, we'll have a nice sturdy piece. So let me just measure what I need in there, a small rule, and that would be, that's 21.5mm, so that will be the 28.5 by 21.5. So here's my piece that I cut for that. Just make sure I've got the right piece, I'm not using the side piece, I've done that before. Okay, so I'll put one of those in at the bottom. Like that, make sure it's flush along that bottom edge. Put another one in the middle. And I'm also going to be having like an insert around the inside of the opening. The picture will show you what I mean. I think that looks quite nice and finishes it off nicely. I'll probably do that out of 0.8mm thick wood. I'll just pop one there. Don't want to go too high up because remember I'll have the top bit along there. And then apply glue along the edges of those. That goes in there like that. And that one's a little bit longer there, but that's okay, I can just sand that off. Press those together. I then actually want to put that bit in, like that. Otherwise it'll be more difficult to get to if I've already done this side. So I'll just put a little bit of glue along the top of that side piece. And then along the back edge of here. And that sits along there, getting it flush with that top of the opening there. And this piece. Like that. Really see it coming together now. I just want to check these for size, that's right. I cut these with the handheld mitre guillotine. Makes it easier when you've got to cut a thicker piece of wood against the grain. Again, making sure that's flush along the bottom edge. You don't want one side to be higher than the other. And I can position these two just randomly along there. I can now attach the remaining side. Might need a little bit more glue, I think. Oh! Okay. Let's get that into place and then I'll wipe that glue up. Like that. I want to put some masking tape across this. Press it all together until the glue begins to take. And it feels like a nice sturdy piece as I'm doing this, which is good. Okay, so I'll grab some tape. Oh, I've made such a mess. Right, so I want a couple of nice long bits to go straight across like that. Put it nice and tight. It's always a good idea to use as much tape as you can. One more bit at the bottom there. And that can now be left to dry. But before I leave it, I just want to go and try it inside the doll's house, just because I'm too impatient to wait for it to dry. And there it is in place. Now I haven't put the wooden flooring back down, so there's a bigger gap at the top than there will be. And I cut the hearth the same width as the chimney breast, and then the surround will be a little bit narrower than it, so we'll have a little bit of an overlap there, which looks quite nice. Okay, so that's now in place, and I think that looks really nice. And then I've got enough room over here for my little desk that I'm going to make. Although I did have a think actually the other day about maybe having the desk sitting here in front of, you know, the bookcase at the back, facing out this way, because then you'd have a nice window to look out as you were sitting working. But it all depends really how much room the sofa will take up and how deep the bookcase will be. I don't want it to sort of look too cramped in that area. Okay, so now that's done, I can leave that to dry, and I just want to have a quick look through my box of fabrics, and they need a sort out as well, so we'll go and do that next. Okay, so this is my fabric box, and it's so full now that I have to really crush the lid down just to get the clips on. So I found another crate, exactly the same measurement, so I'm going to sort of sort it into the two crates. And the idea of this really is just to see what I've got and to see if there's anything I can use for the Doll's House study. And it's always a good idea to go through what you've got in stock first, before you make any new purchases, as you might find that you've already got something that would have been suitable. So I've left these in the bag, and these are the fabrics that I'm using for the kitchen. You probably recognise those, so I'll leave those in there. But I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. Maybe I'll sort of try and colour code it a bit, or maybe I'll just sort through for now and then sort it out a bit better off camera. So just some nice cotton fabrics. These are quite nice, these lavender patterned ones. I got those for a nice bed, the bed that I made. Bits of peach. So I'm looking for plain blues and maybe something with a bit of a pattern in it. That's my Hessian fabric there. I keep all the tiny little bits of that, and that's like a waffle fabric, which is really nice for like towels or tea towels, things like that. Piece of silk there. Some more toweling, although I don't know about you, but I find some of this toweling fabric is a little bit actually too thick to use as towels. When you sort of fold it over, it looks a little bit too chunky. But that might make a nice dressing gown or something to hang on the back of a door. It's black and white, plain white there, so that might be useful. So I'll pop that to one side. Ducks. Lots of little bits. I just sort of shove all the little bits back in. Maybe I'll get a little bag to put those in. Nice checked fabrics there. Oh, a nice sort of beigey one there. That might be nice to use. The walls are going to be a sort of creamy beige, so that will contrast nicely with the walls. And the paint I'm using for the walls is one that we just used in our living room, and we bought far too much, so I'm going to use that, and it's just a normal household emulsion. That's quite nice. That's a stripe. That's like a beige stripe with a pale cream. I'll pop that in the pile. I did put some blues in there, but I'm not keen on that one. It's sort of like a mottled blue, so I'm not going to put that to one side, or the gingham, because that really doesn't go with what I want to achieve in there. Now there's a nice blue stripe, and I think I used that in the beach room. Quite like that. Put that to one side. I've got a pale blue corduroy here, which is lovely, but again that's more for a nursery or something like that, so put that in there. Some more white. Now this is quite a nice blue. That's just a nice sort of sky blue cotton. That might be nice as a contrast in fabric. More gingham. Pale yellow. Again, another darker beige there, and that's actually got a tiny little check on it which you might not be able to see on camera, but I quite like that, so we'll put that there. Purples, blues. I do love fabric though, and I think that's one of the reasons I really like making miniature beds, because I just love putting fabrics together. This is another sort of beigey, really fine stripe there. That's quite nice. And I won't be using all of these, but it's just nice to have some options. Again, some more sort of nursery fabric there. Red completely out. Browns. Quite a lot of white. I'd only be using as an accent anyway, so I wouldn't need too much of it. That's blue, but it's a flower pattern. That's quite nice. Nice sort of, I don't know, beige. What's the colour? Sort of taupe. Nice fine cotton. Put that there as well. That green, that was, I don't know where I got that from, that's quite thick. Quite nice though. Pinks, peaches. That's lovely. I got that to make a bed with as well, but not for this project. All the bright yellow. There's brown there, which is nice but a bit too dark. Same with that one. Again, nice blue, but that's gingham. A little bit of another bit of just beige cotton there. Use that. Felt square. I'm getting screwed up in there. Starting to get a bit messy now. All these sort of little scraps. Again, blue, but that's dots. And this as well I used for the beach room, and that colour's called denim. And again, I'd call that plain, but it has got a really tiny little sort of check in the fabric there. Grey and brown. It's lovely check again. I really like check fabrics. That blue, but that's too flowery. Diamonds. No, I've got a sort of beigey gold stripe there. That's quite nice. I call this tobacco. Looks like a sort of tobacco stained piece of cotton. All white. Cupcakes. Most of these fabrics over the years I've bought from little trim-ins. Another nice piece there, beigey gold. Actually no, putting it with the pile, that's a bit too gold. Put that back in. More gingham, reds, patterns. No. I'll pile those on there and then bring them back in. That's quite nice, but not for this. That was some printed cotton. I actually made up the pattern on Photoshop and printed my own piece of cotton there, but it's very thin. Let's see what I've got in here. Oh, that's that mottled blue again. Dark blue, probably a bit too dark, but I'll put it in the pile anyway. We might need it for accent colours. Bit of blue tick in there. I'll pop that there as well. I'll pop that waffle fabric over there as well, because I'm going to have a little basket full of cosy blankets. We might make something out of that. This is lovely. Brushed cotton. I made a really lovely bed using this and some browns. And it came out really lovely. That there as well. Another sort of taupey beige colour. See what we've got down here. I've got a pair of old gloves in there that I thought I could use for, they're all torn, so I've put them in there to use for like little leather trimmings. So that's a handy tip if you've got any old gloves or old handbags or purses, anything like that. You could use those for miniature fabric work. Oh, now this is nice. Now this is the same as that denim one I showed you. I can't remember what the blue is actually called now, but again, it's got that tiny little check. And this I would actually say was more of a teal, that sort of turquoisey, tealy blue. I don't even know if that's a colour, but to me that looks more like a greeny blue. That might look nice. Bit of foam there. That's that sort of denim-y blue again, not really keen on that one. Now, again, that looks more like a sort of turquoise. Does that go with that? Sort of. We'll put that to one side. A bit more just pale blue cotton there. Put that there. That's blue, the toweling fabric again. Now this is the lovely stripe that I used in the beach room, but it has actually been discontinued. So that's all I've got, but I'm going to put it in the pile because that would make a nice couple of nice cushions or something like that. That would look nice on that window seat. A tiny little bit there. And again, that's that sort of turquoisey. Actually, that's the opposite of that. So you've got the turquoise flowers on the white and then the white flowers on the turquoise. Right. I think we're just getting to all the mess at the bottom now. Look, there's a little bit more of that stripe. Oh, that's quite a nice piece there. Yeah, I am going to have to, I will sort all these out and probably get rid of a lot of these little scraps. But I think for now, I've done what I wanted to do, just gone through and had a look. What I might be able to use, that's like like a denim, actual jean denim fabric there. It's not jean, but it would look like jeans in miniature clothes, so that's nice. Nice green there. That's pretty, but that's, again, that's too dark. Isn't that nice? One of those cream sort of vines on it. I like that. That's quite a nice little beige. Okay, I think that's it. I'll just put half of it sort of back in there, and then this job will go on my list as 2 fabric crates to sort and fold nicely. I promise you I'm not normally this messy, but it's just a job that's going to take a little while and I haven't got time today, so we'll leave it like that. Let me know how you store your fabric. Do you just have it in crates like this? An idea I've got is to have, you know, all the different shades in different but smaller boxes, or maybe even like a little drawer unit or something. That would be nice. In fact, I'll have a look when I pop to B&Q, see what they've got. But let me know how you store yours. I'd be interested to know, you know, a way of keeping fabric neat. I'm sure yours is a lot neater than mine. That's better, a lot easier to close now. So that's it for today, and I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm about to head off into town to buy those bits and pieces that we need, and in the next episode I'll finish lining those 2 rooms and then we can begin decorating the study, which I'm really looking forward to, and I hope you are too. So for now, thank you for watching and I'll see you soon. Bye!